The enhanced games are making waves, openly allowing performance-enhancing drugs in weightlifting. As a coach who's worked with lifters at the highest levels of the sport, I'll cover 5 aspects of what this means for weightlifting and give you my personal, unfiltered opinion. First off, what are the enhanced games and why do they matter? The enhanced games are essentially an all-you-can-eat buffet of anabolic steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, and amphetamines. And maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I think the enhanced games are essentially the ability or a competition where athletes can have the ability to take anything they want. There's no drug testing. And I think the intent here is to see what human performance is truly capable of. What could an athlete do if there was no doping control? Would they break world records? Are they going to be 10, 20, 50, 30% higher than what you'd expect to see at the Olympic Games? And this competition, I believe, aims to achieve that goal. Number 2, ethical considerations for strength sports. The ethical considerations of drugs in strength sports is actually a little bit, I'd say, smaller than in other sports, because we've already seen this kind of thing happen and play out in weightlifting and powerlifting. So many athletes have dabbled in the use of performance-enhancing drugs to enhance, strength levels in weightlifting, powerlifting. This is almost not going to be that interesting, I would say. If you watch the enhanced games, it's probably not even going to be as dirty as some, SPF powerlifting meets have been, or some untested powerlifting federations. I just don't think that the drug issue in strength sports has not already been beaten, like a dead horse or beaten to death 100 times. So I don't see the ethical concerns there really for strength sports, as we've seen this just over and over and over again over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years in both weightlifting and powerlifting. They're just so intertwined with drugs that at this point we've already seen it all. One other point to consider is that drugs being allowed at sports or in sports, drugs not having any kind of cap to them, makes a more fair playing field. If everyone can do anything they want, then the playing field is fair. I think the counter argument would be that nothing in sports is actually fair, in that everybody is born with different genetics, you have different limb lengths, you have different predispositions that allow you to do different sports at different levels. Everyone's allowed to do anything they want, making the playing field more fair. Again, it's going to come down to who has more money or who has more research or who can create better drugs. I don't think you'll ever be able to create a situation where the entire playing field is fair. The best you can do is what has been done, or what the intent of drug testing is for, is to suppress the excessive use of drugs. Right? The more suppression there is, the more likely you're going to stop more people from doing it. You'll never get a truly fair playing field because it's just not possible. You're going to give yourself a situation where, hey, the people that have more resources will always have an advantage, whether you have drugs or not. Real quick, if you're looking for a personalized, adaptive weightlifting program that's made completely for you and adapts daily to your needs, check out Weightlifting AI. It is the only product of its kind. It has been battle tested by thousands of lifters who are hitting PRs every day, and you can try it for 2 weeks completely free by using the code 2weektrial at checkout. It's the first link in the description of this video. Third point is natural versus enhanced development in sport. Natural versus enhanced development in sport. We know that drugs play a big role in, increasing all kinds of different aspects of performance for an athlete. And when you integrate the drugs into the process of development of an athlete early on, especially at a young age, you're obviously going to augment that and create permanent changes or nearly permanent changes in the athlete that have a huge impact on their future performance. Having a competition where we know that drugs are allowed or that the testing doesn't exist would augment that process. And I think this kind of goes back to the ethical concerns, where if you have a competition that gains any level of prestige, if there's a huge amount of money at stake, you're going to end up with a lot of people doing more and more shady things, giving younger and younger athletes drugs to get more performance because the outcome is potentially huge. You're definitely going to see more of that. So there's a big concern there. All drugs are going to do, for the most part, is change the magnitude of the training process. So people that are using drugs will make progress faster. They can do more training. They're going to make better gains. The drugs make you much, much stronger. The recovery aspect of them is there, but the primary benefit of taking drugs, especially steroids, is that you get much, much stronger. So I think there's this kind of question, which is, if we know that at the end of the road there's an all drugs Olympics, when does the process start? How much do people use? Are they willing to sacrifice more and more to get there? And what does that do to further innovation in training science? Do people stop worrying about getting smarter and making better decisions and just worry about how they can take more drugs? It's going to bias to people that respond stronger to drugs as well. If you have somebody who takes a little bit of a drug and makes huge progress, that athlete's probably going to get selected more, whereas that athlete might not have the same talents or skills as another athlete who would clean do better. So I think you have a big change in the genetic pool and potentially a big change in the motivation for people when drugs come into play. And that is going to have an impact on the process of training, the research that goes into it, the science that goes into it. So if this does take off, then you end up in that predicament where, hey, do we just kind of stop innovating on the training process and focus more and more on drugs, pharmaceutical aids, all these things? Number 4, what is this competition serving to prove to us? My handwriting is so bad. Barring my terrible handwriting, what does it prove? It proves that if athletes are performing better at the enhanced games, that, hey, the Olympics are probably somewhat clean, right? Or if we have everybody show up and anyone from, your local run club gets on a bunch of sauce and goes and beats, the top 400 meter or 800 meter Olympic champion, then yeah, drugs are doing all of it. Now, on the other side of the coin, let's say a bunch of people show up and they're all just gassed up out of their mind. They've just taken everything they could possibly take. They just hit a line of right off the barbell and they go to lift and they do lifts that would place them 8th at the World Championships. What does that prove to us? Let's say you take the best athletes in the world and they show up and they compete and they do win this competition and they've also passed every drug test that's come along the way, on the way to the Olympics, right? What does it prove? Well, it could get us into some weird scenarios where, one, are the best athletes actually going to go to this competition? In my opinion, no. I just don't think you're going to see the absolute top athletes in the world compete here. As far as weightlifting is concerned, you're not going to get Lasha showing up, sauced up out of his mind. You're not going to get any of the top lifters that are currently lifting to go there and then take a bunch of drugs and lift bigger weights. We already know what's going on in weightlifting, so I don't think anything special is going to happen there. The other side of the coin is, let's say you have a bunch of lifters and now they take drugs and they're pretty decent and they show up and they don't improve that much. Let's say they only gain maybe 10 kilos on their totals. Maybe they go in making totals that put them at, like I said, top 5, top 7, but not really enough to be like top 1, 2, or 3. Then does that prove that there is potentially a discrepancy here between both training, genetics, the system behind these athletes that are winning the Olympics and the World Championships versus it just being purely a drug-driven thing? I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't expect, personally, that we're going to see any performances that are even that noteworthy. Maybe some big lifts here and there, maybe some, outside chance a really good lifter shows up, in their sort of off season, or they retire for a period and then go and lift big. But I just don't see it being the kind of thing that's going to drive results. I think there's another factor as well, which is there's really not going to be the level of competition at this event that you would expect to see at something like a World Championships or an Olympic Games. And that is probably across the board, all the sports. That has a huge impact on performance. Competing against the best in the world at the same competition at the same time is very different than, someone taking a bunch of drugs and showing up to a competition where maybe there's only 30 lifters, 25 lifters. Are we even going to get a full roster? Are they all top A players? So there's a lot that goes into this where I think that the simple answer of, hey, do the drugs really do that much, or what is the actual performance, human performance limit? I don't think this competition is going to answer that. It's definitely not going to be definitive if it does give you any answers. And number 5, what does this mean for the future of weightlifting? What does it mean for weightlifting? In general, I think that the idea of having an untested federation has existed for a long time. And it kind of parallels what you see in powerlifting. There's a tested federation that is probably the most respected. It's, obviously the one where the most athletes are gravitating to and most people want to be in. And you see the other federations where they're untested for whatever reason. People compete there as well for their own personal reasons, but you don't see the same level of performance, I would say. You obviously have bigger lifts, but you don't have quite as deep of a talent pool as you do in the tested federation. I think that the all drugs Olympics or the enhanced games, whatever you want to call it, probably has almost zero impact on sports in the long term, my opinion. I don't know if it'll even happen. We don't know the actual ramifications of, hey, everyone can take drugs, you can do this, it's cool, there's some prize money. Does that really pan out to anything for weightlifting? Will anyone in weightlifting suddenly decide, hey, I was going to go compete and try to get to the Olympic Games, but the all drugs Olympics or the enhanced games, they're going to pay me $250,000 if I win a medal, so I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to take a bunch of drugs and compete there. I just don't see it having a huge impact either way on a sport like weightlifting, where primarily the countries that are driving resources into the sport are doing it to win the Olympics, because winning the Olympics means something on the international stage. Winning the enhanced games doesn't. It's just not going to have any prestige. If anything, it'll just be stigmatized where, hey, you're only as good as the fact that you took drugs, right? I just don't see there being super high value placed on, the person who wins the enhanced games over someone who wins the Olympic Games. So long term, I don't think it has any impact on weightlifting. Short term, it might be cool to watch, and I hope that there's a bowl of for people to do right before they go to lift, because that would be super fun to watch. If not, though, we'll see what happens. If you like this video, subscribe and leave a comment telling me just what you think about the enhanced games, and then go ahead and check out this next video on the Bulgarian system where I break it down in detail.